Yo, welcome to the ACC Preview Podcast. We're ACC guys, I guess. Me and Matt Townsend over there with me. We'll be talking about the ACC today, what's to come this season, hot takes, bold predictions, games to watch, players to know, and I guess the teams too. We might as well talk about the programs that make up this intriguing conference that's very, very fun to watch, Matt. You're a big fan of it, so yeah.
On the come up too. It's probably one of the best years for the ACC, just in terms of the strength of teams and especially strength of players they have out there.
Strength of players is incredible. I'm excited to dive into a few of them, and just share our knowledge of this conference and maybe help y'all get a good understanding of what could happen this season. In addition to this preview pod of the ACC, we'll have preview podcasts for every conference in FBS ball, and I believe in FCS preview as well. We also, I don't know if you've heard, 368-page college football season preview magazine, only $9.99, some of the best value out there. Instead of going to see Barbie or Oppenheimer, you can only spend a few bucks on this. That's a pretty good deal, Matt Townsend.
It's been getting rave reviews. Everyone who's read it, my mother says she loved it.
My mother loved it too. Mothers love it.
It's not Mother's Day yet, but it's never too early to start thinking about Mother's Day presents. It's a great time, really.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Father's Day was just around the corner, behind the corner. So this could be a belated Father's Day gift. $9.99, 368 pages of incredible college football content, about 1,200 words written on each team. So if we don't say enough good or bad things about your favorite ACC team in this preview, go check out the magazine. Go find your team, read about it. Each team gets their own storyline. And I mean, there's other cool stuff too, like player features and NIL for Good's a cool story, Australian punters, a lot of good stuff in there. But we got to talk about the ACC.
What we're here to do.
Yeah, so I think it's only right that we talk about a few games to look ahead to, and then we'll get into some of the other stuff. What's the first non-conference game in the ACC that you're looking forward to?
It's one of the best non-conference games in all of college football. It's Florida State versus LSU, a rematch of a tremendous game last year where they won 24-23, and they're back again in week one of this year. Florida State, one of the more improved teams in the country, is with the shocking return of Jared Verse, who is likely to be a first-round draft pick, now is likely to be a top 10 draft pick if he has another sensational year this year, which we expect he will. Florida State was active in the transfer portal. They added a ton of great players. Jordan Travis is on the short watch list for the Heisman candidacy. And then we have LSU, of course, who brings back Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, tons of studs on offense. It's going to be a fun game.
Yeah, it's going to be electric. And if you ask me, Jared Verse was going to be a top 10 pick in last year's draft. But yeah, I guess he'll settle for it in 2024. Absolute game wrecker, dude. For me, I kind of went under the radar because I know LSU Florida State gets all the hype. Thunder South Carolina every year is a banger. How about Minnesota, North Carolina in week 3? Not many folks are thinking about this game right now, and I recognize that, but I like the opportunity that this game brings for UNC. We're going to get a good chance to see Drake May in the UNC passing game against a pretty good Minnesota defense, especially in the secondary with guys like Mr. Wally. So you look at UNC's roster, people are going to be sending out question marks like, who's the wide receiver that's going to step up? It's going to be Devontae Walker. You got Nate McCollum with them as well. Maybe Andre Green breaks out. J.J. Jones there too. These guys, this passing game, that receiving corps has a big test on their hands against Minnesota secondary early on week 3. So going to be looking forward to that. If Drake May goes nuts, oh my, Twitter won't stop talking about her, or X, whatever the heck we call that garbage now. But yeah, let's talk about some actual in-conference games.
All right. For me, I went with Duke at UNC because it's one of the better quarterback matchups of the year. You just talked about Drake May, how electric he is, how good that offense could be when Devontae Walker steps up and Nate McCollum comes out there. Riley Leonard is a bit slept on by people outside of the immediate vicinity of us, but Riley Leonard's a top, probably 3 quarterback in the country. Riley Leonard is an absolute. Riley Leonard is a monster. He is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in college football. He has athleticism too. As he talked about when we interviewed him, he will dunk on you. It will not be slept on. But it's one of the, if not the best quarterback matchups in the country this year.
Yeah. So Riley Leonard was very nice. He did not say he would dunk on me in particular, but Jared Verse did say that. So.
Well, just because he didn't say he would dunk on you, doesn't say he won't dunk on you. He's just not going to go out with the intent of doing it. He still could do it.
Riley Leonard's going to dunk on everyone else, but he won't dunk on me. Make sure of it. He go like Jelly Fam, lay it up, finger roll type stuff. But yeah, Riley Leonard, exceptional athlete. People I don't think really understand how incredible of an athlete he is. As we're talking about dunking on people, look at his high school tape. Throwing down windmills in game with ease.
He led the team in rushing last year. Like he's a great athlete.
And like Matt said, precision. That ball placement is precise. I can't believe Matt said top 3. That made me really happy. I have him as the number 5 quarterback in the country. So a bit on the outside of the top 3, but if you go around the country polling people, Matt and I are well above everyone else when it comes to Riley Leonard hype train. We both think that this guy's like a first round type pick in the NFL, and can't wait to watch him in that game. Can't wait to watch him in every other game. But for me, I went with the boring ACC game to watch. It's Florida State Clemson in week 4. Yuck. I mean, come on, Liam. We kind of found a different game to talk about. It's really, this clash is so exciting because you are looking at the 2 titans of this conference, you would believe. And it's Clemson's defense that is just so daunting. So it's going to be a really fun mix and match here of Clemson's defense versus Florida State's exciting offense, and Florida State's impressive defense versus Clemson's offense that's looking to take a step in the right direction with Mr. Cade Klubnik, who could clearly just burst onto the scene this year, light it up, and be in that QB1 talk when we're talking about 2025 NFL draft, he and Drew Aller. So we'll see how Cade Klubnik fares in that one, but it's Clemson's secondary, man. You've got Andrew Makuba leading the way. Absolute dog. We'll probably talk about him a little bit more later, but man, Florida State Clemson week 4 is going to be exciting, and Duke UNC week 11 is going to be incredible too. That game never fails to amaze.
Like Clemson has stars all across that defense too, at every level. Tyler Davis on the line, Jeremiah Trotter at linebacker, Makuba in the second. That unit is deep.
Yeah, they're absolutely nasty, and we think highly of these teams for good reason. We'll talk about a few key players as well now before we kind of get into teams. You want to start with some breakouts to look out for?
My first breakout, I went to Pitt, and I have Kanata Mumpfield, the transfer of last year from Akron, who had a star-making year at Akron as a true freshman, had over 800 yards, and last year he just kind of fell off a little bit. It wasn't a bad year by any stretch; it just wasn't the breakout year we expected. I think this year he's going to take a step forward. He's really athletic. He's a great route runner, and if he can just get in sync with Phil Jurkovich, if Phil Jurkovich stays healthy as well, I think that he could put up a big year.
All right. For my first guy, I also went with a receiver. I'm going to Virginia, who, we're probably not very high on. I know last year wasn't at all, but there's a promising receiver. They've got 6'4" Malachi Fields. I love watching this guy. He's an incredible athlete. And what you'll notice about him when he finally gets going in his collegiate career, jump ball phenom. Any jump ball is his. They're not 50-50 balls. They're not 60-40s, 90-10s. They're 99-1s with Malachi Fields. Really good at the point of the catch. Catch radius is massive. He's just a really fun watch. And on a UVA team that we don't expect to be very good, going to be behind the game. It's going to be passing a good bit. Look out for Malachi Fields to make a splash.
Then for my second one, I went with the true freshman, but he was already getting run in the spring with Clemson's first team, which would be telling you something about him as a D lineman. Is if he's already running with the first team, they think extremely highly of him. That's Peter Woods at D tackle. He's on the smaller side. He was a 5-star, one of the best D lineman recruits in the country. I think he was ranked second, but he's on the smaller build, that kind of more athletic D lineman build we've seen coming out a lot after the success of Aaron Donald. He's 6'2", 280. His first step is extremely quick. He's lightning fast, and I think that he can step up, and I think he'll play early, and I think he'll play often. He's going to be probably in the talk for a first round pick in 2026 if he does what most people think he can do.
Oh, without doubt, and it's kind of frightening that we're talking about potential 2026 picks. 2025 is fine, but 2026 is wild. Like, goodness, man. I'm going to Duke for a breakout talent. It's cornerback, not quarterback. Cornerback Joshua Pickett, 6'1", 180. He got his first real playing time last season. He had like 41 tackles. He had 7 pass breakouts with no interceptions. Expect that to change. I really like the way that he makes plays on the ball, as evidenced by his 7 pass breakups. He gets after it. He's a good disruptor. He's very intelligent. Just another really fun guy to watch, and you're going to see him get like 3 or 4 interceptions this year. He's going to help lead Duke's defense in a big way. So, I mean, when we talk about this Duke team, it's really Riley Leonard, and then people stop talking. They don't know much else. Joshua Pickett's the dude. Watch out for him.
That was something that Duke was sneaky good at last year. I think they were first or second in turnover margin. They were extremely good at turning the ball over last year, and if he can help that, it'll be a big step forward for them.
Most definitely. Let's go with key players here.
My first, I went with key players. We're not talking about the stars. We're going to talk about the stars plenty, but we're talking about players that are going to be extremely important to the success of their team. And for me, the guy that jumps out when I think of that is Xavier Restrepo from Miami. X was in the first 2 games where Miami actually kind of looked good last year before everything went extremely downhill extremely quickly. Xavier Restrepo was Tyler Van Dyke's key target. He was his go-to man. And when he got hurt and missed the Texas A&M game, it was all downhill from there. He only ended up putting about 240 yards last year, but almost all of those came in the first 2 games. He was the key player on offense. If he and Tyler can get in sync, it could be a comeback year for them. It could be a better year for Miami. Then it'd be hard to be worse than last year, but it could be a comeback year for Miami.
You personally would love a comeback year for Mr. Van Dyke.
If he doesn't have a comeback here, I've said a few things that I shouldn't have said.
Oh man! So my first key player to look out for, we're sticking with this Carolina theme here. It's North Carolina receiver Devontae Walker, who I briefly mentioned before. Love watching this kid play. 6'3", about 175-ish, and yeah, we're talking about a guy that played Kent State the last few years, went to Georgia last year, had 106 receiving yards on 7 catches and a touchdown, a long screen. I believe it was a screen went for a touchdown with them about 50 yards, if I'm not mistaken. Was one of the only receivers in the country last year to carve up Georgia. Was playing for Kent State. Says something. Devontae Walker is someone that when you watch him, you're going to notice one thing, and that's his long speed. The strides that he takes are impressive to know. Like, they're so dang impressive, man. He makes up so much ground so quickly. He's incredibly tough to track down. That's why he's a great deep threat. We're going to see Drake May throw him a lot of balls vertically, and it's going to be incredible. I can't wait to see what Devontae does. I think 1,000 yards minimum. I think that should be easy. We'll see how much higher he could get, though, if he could be a Biletnikoff sleeper. I think he's going to do numbers, man. I really like Devontae Walker, and this is someone that, like, I'm just higher on than everyone else, right? Like, I think he's the 6th or 7th best receiver in the country at this very point, but people don't really know that. I think this guy that could very well be a first-round pick, and again, people just don't know that. So what's going to happen is, if UNC succeeds, Drake May is going to be succeeding. A lot of people are going to be talking about Drake May. Who's Drake May passing it to? Devontae Walker. Well, let's see, like 12 receiving touchdowns. Let's go with that.
Very easily doable within that offense. My second guy, I went with a cornerback. I went to Pitt again. I went MJ Devonshire. He has one of the best cornerbacks in the ACC, probably top 10-ish in the country. He's a really good corner. Pitt needs that. Pitt's D line is always going to be good. Their coaching just turns out star D linemen, but they need the secondary has to cover a little bit before that D line can get there. And MJ Devonshire is a big part of that. He's really quick feet. He's really good at mirroring underneath routes. He's really disruptive in the passing game, and he's good in zone coverage, good in man coverage. And I think he's a sleeper for a day 2 draft pick, second or third round. He's really good.
Mm-hmm. And MJ is definitely a really good player, and it's good to see a lot of people recognize his talent. For me, I'm staying in the Carolina theme again. I'm sorry. It's Wake Forest receiver Jamal Banks. He's 6'4", 6'5" an absolute behemoth, gargantuan. In this Wake Forest offense that loses Sam Hartman as their thrower, that loses A.T. Perry, their WR1, Mr. Banks and Green are going to be crucial in this offense. They've proven themselves last year, and Jamal Banks is going to demand a lot of targets. You're going to see him again go vertically a lot, moss people, but don't sleep on him in the short passing game. He runs a nice curl route, get to the outside, catch something on the sidelines, make a play out of it. He's a very, very good player, and again, not many people realize that. So that's why we're talking about, like, Jamal Banks is going to be so, he could maybe classify under that breakout tag too, but he's going to be such a key player for Wake Forest's success. He had 141 yards on 6 grabs, I believe, versus Clemson last season. So look out for Jamal Banks.
Definitely. Do we want to start talking about some of the teams now? We talked a lot about the players.
Yeah,
it's about time we start talking about some of the teams.
You want to talk about some Boston College?
Sure. I love Boston College. So Phil Jerkovich is gone after 3 very injury-ridden years. The new quarterback's going to be, by all accounts, it looked like it'd be Emmett Morehead. He wasn't asked to do too much. He did, as Phil Jerkovich gets injured from time to time, he was asked to step in. He was good, not spectacular. He did throw for over 300 yards in consecutive games last year. So if he could replicate a couple of those games, it'll be a great step for this offense. Pat Garwo's back after a pretty down year compared to what he did in 2021. He only had about 400 yards, but those are going to be the 2 key names on offense. Are going to be how well can Emmett Morehead acclimate himself as the quarterback in this offense, and then how well can Pat Garwo run the ball. On defense, they have a few stars. Donovan Ziriaku, I believe is how it's pronounced. I'm not positive on that, but I believe that's how it's announced. He had 8.5 sacks last year and 14.5 tackles for loss. He's their best player on defense easily. And then Elijah Jones, a DB, had 13 pass breakups last year. He's the only starter remaining in that secondary, so it'll be a key for him to kind of keep everything together while everyone else steps into their roles.
Yeah, and Emmett Morehead in his time playing last year was very up and down. When he was on, and it was scary, but when he was off, it was scary. Like there's a wide range of outcomes for him. So we'll see how Emmett fares this season at quarterback. When you look at Boston College's schedule, though, Matt, you gave them a realistic record of 5-7. Did you have them maybe dropping the ball in one of their first non-conference games?
No, I have them sweeping their non-conference pretty easily. Their non-conference should be one of the easier ones in the schedule. They have an extremely easy non-conference schedule. I could see them dropping one to maybe Army, but other than that, I think that they should. Army or UConn would be one of the ones I think they drop. I don't think they drop one to Northern Illinois or Holy Cross.
It's funny because I'm looking at Northern Illinois and Holy Cross, and those are the ones I'm more afraid of Boston College for. I mean, I'll talk about Northern Illinois a lot in the MAC preview, but I think they're going to be a dark horse in that conference. And Holy Cross, we can't sleep on Holy Cross. It's like a top 5-7 FCS team with really good quarterback and receiver play. A regional matchup there from the boys from Worcester. If Boston College sleepwalks in that game, they're losing the Holy Cross. I'm sorry, BC fans. I'm just an honest guy. 5-7 might be the realistic one there. I might go 4-8. I think it's going to be rough sledding for BC again. And I'm sorry, Jeff Hafley. I think Boston College might be moving on after his season.
He's definitely one of the coaches on the hottest seats in the country.
I definitely agree. Let's go in alphabetical order, you think?
Sure. If you look into our fantastic magazine, which we will talk about a few times because we really do think it is one of the better, if not the best, college football preview magazines out there, you will find that we talk about most of the teams in alphabetical order. But before we move on, I do want to talk about one person who I think could be a sleeper breakout candidate. Mm-hmm. So Ryan O'Keefe's going to be the top receiving target, the transfer from UCF. But Joseph Griffin, when he did have his good games last year, his good games were with Emmett Morehead. So I think he does have some chemistry there. And I think he could be someone who could be on the short list for breakouts as far as BC goes.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I looked at Griffin when I did like prize picks articles, which I might do again this season. I looked at Griffin a few times. We'll go Clemson since ABC order, and I'll let you take the floor again since you wrote a lot of words about them.
I wrote a lot about the ACC. I think I had 5 ACC teams in my preview. So Clemson, they were good again last year, but maybe not as dominant as we expected. They missed the college football playoffs for the second year in a row, which is the first time that's happened since the introduction of it, I believe. So they will be looking to get back there this year. The biggest question mark is if they get back there, obviously, is the play of Cade Klubnik. If Cade Klubnik steps out as a breakout quarterback, is one of the top 10, one of the better quarterbacks in the country, then Clemson's going to be really good because we know about the defense. The defense is dominant. They have stars, first or second round picks at every single level of the defense, for going from Tyler Davis and Rook Oroho on the D-line to Jeremiah Trotter and Barrett Carter and the linebackers to Nate Wiggins and Makuba in the secondary. They have stars at every single level of that defense, and their defense is going to be good. That's not a question. The question is, how well can Cade Klubnik perform? Because we know Will Shipley's going to be running the ball well. He's one of the better backs in the country. It's all down to Klubnik. If he's a star, Clemson probably goes 12-0, and they're going to be in the college football playoffs. If he's not, they're going to drop a few games. It all comes down to him.
For how amazing Clemson's defense is, just for reference, yeah, for the magazine we had to choose a few stars to know. For each team, we did 2 offensive, defense, and breakout. Andrew Makuba didn't even make the stars to know on the defense side of the ball, and that's someone that Matt and I both view as a potential first-round pick. I personally think he's the best safety in the nation. Matt will go with the Miami lads that we'll be talking about later, spoiler. But Makuba's an incredible. I would love to be able to have him on for an interview and just talk about his background, his childhood, and the story that he has to tell. As a football player, instincts are marvelous. We're gonna see this guy make some incredible interceptions this year with innate closing speed. It's gonna be something to see how this Clemson offense gets going early. Garrett Riley, that's a dude, Matt.
He had a good year last year. Some would say
he parlayed it into a big job here.
Yeah, the biggest thing for that offense is obviously we know the backfield's set. They have Phil Maffa, Will Shipley, one of the better 1-2 duos in all of college football. The receiver room, people will talk a lot about how Clemson failed DJ Galele. The part of that is they never really gave him a stud receiver, and they didn't really do that with Cade yet either. Antonio Williams will probably be the top guy, but other than that, there's not a lot in that receiver room. So that's going to be the most interesting part for me, because Garrett Riley, obviously last year at TCU had all the wide receiver help in the country for Max Duggan. He doesn't have that this year, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I also completely agree with. I mean, having Quentin Johnson was such a blessing for them, and college football fans didn't know what to expect from TCU last year, obviously, and they didn't really know that Quentin Johnson was a menace And then we know what went on from there. But Antonio Williams is definitely the guy that I view as who this team's WR1 should be. I think he has the highest ceiling of anyone in that room. So we'll see if he and Klubnik connect early. They're both youngins, so you have that going for them. But you look at the schedule. They go to Duke to start the year on Monday night, and then you have two straight up wins before you play Florida State. But you have a realistic prediction of 11-1.
I think just their defense is enough. Their defense week 1's gonna be a really good test for Riley Leonard in the start of his year. I think in general they have the team that's good enough to beat Duke, and I think they drop one of Florida State versus North Carolina. Probably, obviously, it'd be Florida State. That is one of the better teams we expect to be in the country, but I can't see them losing more than 2 games personally. With the rest of their schedule is very weak. Besides those 3 games, those are the 3 best teams they face by far. And they get the advantage of playing both Florida State and North Carolina in Death Valley, which is obviously a very big advantage, being one of the best home advantages in the country.
It is. We'll go talk about Duke here. I'll lead the way. You didn't write about Duke, neither did I, but I'm a Duke guy this year. What can I say?
We like Duke.
I do. I'm very high on this Duke Blue Devils team. Riley Leonard helps. Coach Elko he's just straight up elite. Like, can we be honest? What he's able to do in year 1 at Duke is mad impressive. This is a team that returns a good bit. Graham Barden, that's a dude to look out for, a potential first-round pick at left tackle. He helps carry the load on that Duke offense. When we're talking about Duke, the thing is, this roster does not have many stars. It has Riley Leonard, it has Graham Barden, and then most college football fans are like, okay, that's Duke. No, I mean, there's just like the fact that Barden and Riley are able to elevate this team to the levels that they do is just mad impressive. And what they're able to get out of these players is incredible because, again, there's no other star players on this team. I truly like that's just the case. Like, Jalen Calhoun's a really good receiver. He's really good for this scheme. He's not a star. Someone that I would look out for at receiver to maybe break out is someone like Samir Haggins, or I like Jordan Moore too. It's just like they got to find something else at receiver, and if they do, they're going to go places. I like Jacques Moore in the backfield as well. As I mentioned, Joshua Pickett at corner is a really good player. Look at Chandler Rivers, another young corner. Miles Jones is going to be a good piece for them. Maybe Al Blades comes out and plays really well. They have a really underrated secondary. Dorian Mousy is a very good linebacker. Dwayne Carter's a monster in the trenches. Like, this Duke team is loaded everywhere. They just don't have the name power. And should we care about that they don't have the name power? No, that'd be silly. They went 9-4 last year without much name power. People last year couldn't tell you that Riley Leonard was their quarterback. Duke's going to do damage this season.
A couple names you missed out on there that I want to touch on. Brandon Johnson, he's extremely versatile with what they do in the secondary. They send him on blitzes a lot. He's really influential in their run game, and obviously as a corner, he's gonna be in the pass game. But they do a lot with him. They ask him to do a lot. And then Jacob Monk is on the O-line as well next to Graham Barton. He was also first team All ACC. So they have a good O-line, which obviously people aren't going to talk about O-linemen. The people don't care about O-linemen. We care about O-linemen. We love O-linemen.
The big nasties. What's not to like?
So they have a good offensive line in front of Riley Leonard. So he is set up well in terms of that. Obviously, they need someone to take a step at wide receiver if they're going to be up in the upper echelon of the ACC. But I think they're going to be a good ACC team. They are in the top 5 teams in this conference, and they should be again this year.
Yeah, the good thing here about the offense is the scheme that Kevin Jones has in place here. And while we're talking about no name power for these receivers, really, like Jalen Calhoun's a good player, Jordan Moore's a good player, it's not that these guys need to be like stars anyway. It would just help. They're going to be schemed open a lot. Riley Leonard's just got to he's got to just make the throws. Like it's a very simple system in place. Riley Leonard goes out there, analyzes the defense, looks at his first read. If it's not there, he might be running. May look at his second read and make the throw. It's very simple, a lot of mesh concepts and stuff. But Duke's realistic roster in our magazine is 7-5. I disagree with that. I think this is an 8, 9, 10 win team. I think Duke could do absolute damage this year. I'll say it. I think it could start in week 1. I've deluded myself into believing that Duke could go toe-to-toe with Clemson on Monday night. Having that game at Duke is so crucial for a week 1 opener. Atmosphere is going to be crazy. Clemson's got if Clemson goes in there and their offense has a few sputtering drives to start, it's not good. And I could see Duke taking like a 10-0 lead in this game, and college football fans being mad confused.
Especially if we talk about their realistic being 7-5, especially if you look at their schedule. Besides Clemson and Florida State, they have a very easy conference schedule. Yeah. So I think more realistic for them is 9-3.
Yeah, look, they get Clemson. I'm giving them I think that they'll beat one of Clemson or Notre Dame. They play those two teams in their first 5 games of the season. So we're gonna know about Duke very quickly. So I'll give them like a 4-1 start because they have Lafayette, they have the Leopards, they have Northwestern, they go to UConn, and then they have Notre Dame. I'll give them that 4-1 start. NC State they get at home. I like a win there. At Florida State, I'll give them the loss. Now you're 5-2 at Louisville versus Wake Forest. Both wins in my opinion. At UNC, I just like Duke more. I trust their defense more. I just trust Duke more, so I would give them a win at UNC. And then at Virginia and versus Pitt to end the year, I like both those as wins too. So I had 10-2. I think the path is definitely there. I don't think people won't give Duke their respect until they beat a Clemson or Notre Dame or Florida State. We'll see what they could do. I like Duke a lot though.
Yeah, they should be a very good team this year. And then we just talked about Florida State being one of the teams we expect probably to beat them. They're next in the thing, and they got some stars out there at Florida State.
Safe to say they do have some stars. They also have a 8'5" receiver and Johnny Wilson. You've got Jared Verse, an absolute game wrecker on the defensive side of the ball. Again, the key transfer like Fentrell Cypress II. We like Kyle Morlock a lot. He and Jaheim Bell, incredible tight end transfer duo. There's not enough good things to say about this Florida State team. The question here is, are they going to be mushed by the preseason hype?
I don't think so. I think they have a ton, too much talent, in my opinion, to be mushed by it. They just all the names you mentioned, you didn't even mention Jordan Travis, their star cornerback. He's going to be probably on the short list for Heisman. We're going to talk about this later. They have a lot of Heisman candidates out here at the ACC, but he's going to be on the short list for ACC. Jaheim Bell, I think he could be a top 3 tight end in the country. His athleticism is absurd, and I think he's going to be he's obviously going to have a lot less attention on him than he did at South Carolina. I think he had a down year last year after 500 yards in 2021. I think he can put up 600, 700 yards this year, which for a tight end is really good.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to see how Florida State utilizes that combo of Bell and Morlock. It's going to be pretty fun to see. Jordan Travis probably going to look over the middle on seam passes to Morlock a good bit. He has a really good player feature in our magazine as well. Morlock does. We haven't even talked about running backs. Trey Benson, Lawrence Tuafali, studs. Benson, one of the more underrated running backs in the country. You can't tackle this guy. Runs with a full head of steam. Incredible determination, leg drive. He's an underrated NFL draft prospect as well. They have guys at every position. It's truthfully a receiver that I'm looking for someone else to step up. Like, I know what Johnny Wilson brings to the table, and no offense, Florida State fans, I think that we've overrated him a good bit, or not we, but I think that they've overrated him a decent bit. Keon Coleman, we'll see what he brings to the table as a transfer. Winston Wright, kind of an intriguing name on the down low. And then does freshman sensation Hakeem Williams get into the mix? If Hakeem gets into the mix and he's playing pretty well as a breakout freshman, oh, yikes.
What I'm most excited to watch about them is them in the red zone, because they have the most mismatch heavy offense. 6'7" Johnny Wilson, 6'7" Kyle Morlock. Jaheim Bell is not 6'7". He's a shorter tight end at 6'3", but he also is extremely versatile. Can line up out wide, can line up in the backfield. He'll carry the ball out of the backfield. He's a freak, just mismatch. Then most of the receivers you named, Keon Coleman 6'4", what's his name? Keitron Poiter is 6'3". They have big weapons out on offense, and obviously Jordan Travis, an athletic guy and athletic quarterback, is someone else you have to account for. So they are mismatch heavy in the red zone. I think they're going to be a top 5 red zone offense in the country. They should be tremendous in the red zone.
They really should be. It's going to be sick to see what Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins could do with this offense. The mismatches, man. I can't stop thinking about Morlock and Bell and the imaginative mind that us football dudes have, thinking about what's going to be done with those two. Shaheem's going to get so much action, even carrying the ball like he did in South Carolina, and just making sure that they get him the ball so he can do damage with it. And Morlock's just going to be flanked out there, ready to make a big play down the seam in the red zone. And I don't know, Florida State's frightening. And we haven't even talked about defense. Jared Verse. So underrated. He was underrated when he was coming out at Albany. I don't think people actually recognized that this was one of the top pass rushers in the country. The second that he was standing onto a football field at Florida State, they were wrong early. They saw the presence felt against LSU immediately. And his season just started and ended with a bang against LSU and then against Oklahoma. Cheez-It Bowl. Incredible memories. Jared Verse's season was affected by injuries for a little. Fully healthy year here. Should be a top 5, top 7 pick. How many sacks are we thinking?
It's 12.
12? I'll go 13 and a half.
I think 12 a sack a game is a nice little pace.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree.
And then we go, he's the star on the D line. Then we go to the linebacker. They have 2 really good linebackers in Kalen DeLoach and Tatum Bethune. That it's a really good linebacker duo. I think DeLoach especially, I think could take a step forward this year. Then the secondary, obviously we talked about Fentrell Cypress as the transfer, but they have a ton of good. Most of their turnovers last year came on interceptions, which I think doesn't speak greatly of them punching the ball out of the hole, but I think speaks really well to them as a pass defense. I think they're one of the better pass defenses in the ACC, and they should continue to be so this year.
Looking at their schedule, we already talked about the seismic battle with LSU. Can't wait for that. They also have Southern Miss early, and then they have Boston College at Clemson early on in September. Where are you thinking for Florida State?
It's 11 or 1 and 12 and 0 in my opinion. They could drop 1 to LSU or Clemson, but I think realistically this is a team that can go 12 and 0 and has all of the talent to do so.
Yeah, I like 11 and 1. I think they'll drop the ball to Clemson, and yeah, I like 11 and 1 now. Are you not scared of North Alabama week 11?
It could be a look ahead game. Maybe they're looking ahead to Florida, the rivalry game, but I think they can handle it.
I mean, we're talking about Florida State, and 10-2 would be a massive disappointment.
Yeah, definitely agree. The only reason personally, I would expect them to drop 1 of LSU or Clemson is Clemson being at Death Valley obviously could be scary, and then LSU being week 1, it'll be a big game on Sunday night. it's gonna be have all the national hype there, especially with all the hype coming on them in the preseason. Could we see them maybe disappointed out of the gates a little bit? Maybe, but other than those two games, I just can't see them dropping one this year.
Yeah, and last year they dropped 3 straight games against ranked opponents: Wake, NC State, Clemson. I mean, you look at the schedule. I don't see a case where they're playing 3 straight ranked opponents.
Wake, Pitt, Miami. It could happen.
Yeah, it could happen. Will it?
Sure.
Don't know. You could have also just said Duke, Wake, Pitt.
Well, but then I'm leaving Miami out. I don't want to do that.
Give them 4. Give them okay. Yeah, Florida State. They're a good football team. Look out for Jared Verse. That's a good football player, shockingly. Incredible determination, too. He never gives up on a play, but we'll stop talking about them and we'll talk quickly about the rambling wreck to Georgia Tech.
The Brent Key era begins at Georgia Tech. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is up for
we'll
debate.
Find out.
But I know personally we have a Georgia Tech fan as a friend in Tyler Duke. He didn't want Brent Key. He wanted them to look outwardly for a hire. They didn't do that. He did go 4-4 as the interim head coach, which is probably better than we could have expected for Georgia Tech, honestly, especially looking at that schedule. They beat 2 ranked teams in that time. And I won't say they scared Georgia, but they had Georgia thinking a little bit in the first quarter.
There was so much excitement from college football fans when they saw the first quarter of that game. I mean, our realistic prediction in the magazine from Garrett is 6-6. Do you think that's too high?
No. Maybe. Their non-conference schedule is tougher than you'd expect with Ole Miss and SC State in there. So it probably is a little too high just because of how difficult their non-conference is. I'd say either 5-7 or 4-8 is probably more likely. What's their over-under is 4.5. So yeah, 5-7 or 4-8 makes more sense to me. But maybe he sees something we don't.
Yeah, you look at the back half of the schedule from week 8 on. You have games against North Carolina, Clemson, Georgia, Yikers. You're at Miami too, at Ole Miss. There's just a lot of games on the schedule that are hard to see them winning. I like Miles Sims a lot at DB. Christian Leary's an exciting receiver. We'll see how well he fares in this offense, but I don't know. I don't know. I like Trey.
Trey Cooley from Louisville is good.
Louisville. I really like Trey Cooley. I like watching him there. Louisville always has fun running backs. I really can't see it with this Georgia Tech team. I think like 3-9.
Yeah, I think. Do they have for Power 5 teams one of the tougher non-conference in the country? SC State, Ole Miss, Georgia, Bowling Green is in there too, but SC State, Ole Miss, Georgia is a tough non-conference schedule, especially for a Power 5 team.
Yeah, I mean, really, Ole Miss, Georgia. But yeah, I think we'll just stop talking about Georgia Tech because I think a lot of people listening to this want to move on as well. But if you're a Georgia Tech fan, read about our optimism in the season preview magazine from someone who might believe in them more than us. Louisville's next. Louisville. The bizarre situation where Marcus Satterfield went from the hot seat to parlaying it into a bigger job, or a secure job.
We both thought they needed to move on from Satterfield way before they did.
Yeah, we were thinking I don't know, after the Boston College loss.
He was just so unimaginative with especially having Malik Cunningham to be that unimaginative with your offense. It was a bit of a shame. But they bring in Jeff Brom from Purdue, he led them to one of the most successful periods in Boilermaker football in their history, which is a long history. He was really good for them. Then Obviously, they have a new quarterback this year with the departure of Malik Cunningham, and that's going to be probably Jack Plummer from Arizona. So, what do we think their offense can do realistically?
Like they have so many transfers, it's hard to have a prediction for what's going to happen. I like looking at the receiver room though. Jamari Thrash has blazing speed. I like Chris Bell a lot. I could have easily talked about him as a breakout player. Huge. He got a little action last year, if I'm not mistaken. He's a really big receiver, but he's an incredible athlete. I keep saying incredible. I gotta use a different adjective. He's an amazing athlete. Really good jump ball skills, deep threat. He could be the complete package, and I think you gotta get Chris Bell a lot of looks, especially in this Brom offense. So I identify like Chris Bell and Jamari Thrash as a receiver duo that could be really good. And I used to have like Kevin Coleman, and I don't know. The offense has a lot of pieces. I just do you like get excited about like Jack Plummer?
I wouldn't say I'd be excited about it.
The good thing though is Brom gets a lot out of his quarterbacks, regardless of what you think of them or not.
Yes. By the way, I do like amazing athletes, good assonance there. And then someone you didn't talk about. Wait, some assonance. Now we'll get some consonants. And Jawar Jordan. Jawar Jordan's a really good running back. He should be there. They obviously do a little bit of running back committee there, but he should be the top dog in that running back room. I think he should have a good. He could break 1,000 yards pretty easily.
As a college football fan, I hope that Brom moves on from the Satterfield running back by committee situation, because it was so unimaginative, their offense last year. It was like you could write the Louisville offensive playbook on a napkin last year, and 3/4 of the napkin would still be empty. It was that bare bones. And running back by committee, it just got to this point where even the hot hand would just go to the sidelines, and it's like, what are we doing? Are we keeping them fresh for the NFL? Like we're looking forward to that instead of winning some college football games. But Jawar Jordan's a dog. You look at the defense, guy that sticks out is maybe Storm Duck.
The defense is going to lose a lot because they had a lot of players I really liked on defense and moved on to the NFL, and Yasir Abdullah, Yaya Diaby, Momo Sanogo. He wasn't obviously an NFL caliber, but they had some really good defenders that they lost this year. So they did invest heavily in the transfer portal to kind of fill that. They do have some stars returning. Jarvis Brownlee's really good at corner.
Yeah, Jarvis is sick.
They have a lot of new pieces on defense.
They have a lot of new pieces everywhere. It's a team that is filled with transfers. Who wrote our preview? Dave, our guy Dave, ceiling of 11-1 for the Louisville Cardinals. I'm sure they'll love hearing that. With a floor of 4-8, realistic record of 9-3. What do you make of that?
Obviously, I think if you look at the ceiling of 11-1, most of that comes from, you look at their schedule. There's not a lot on the schedule. They face Duke, which is the toughest team they face by far, but then at either versus Notre Dame or at Pittsburgh is their toughest game other than that. So it is a fairly easy schedule, but I 11-1 is a bit optimistic. I'd say probably a realistic is 7-5, 8-4. They should be a bowl team, you would think, but I think you're probably looking at 7-5.
I think that 7.5 win total is like right on the money as well. I think I would lean to 7, 5, and 4. It's just it's good for them that they start the season. Their whole season, like you said, is just underwhelming on paper. Georgia Tech, like all these transfers got to get together. If they're not firing against Georgia Tech, yikers, that would not be good. But then, like, you have Murray State, you should be good there. Like, figure it out, bond, mesh together. Indiana, it's Boston College. Like, that's your first month of college football. It's Georgia Tech, Murray State, Indiana, Boston College. What happens here is you might go 4-0. You probably go 4-0. Cool. Nice. You go to NC State, the talent difference here and the talent like of level that you've been playing when you start with those 4 games and then you go at NC State versus Notre Dame, at Pitt versus Duke for 4 straight games after that, you've hit a brick wall. This is a complete different level of college football.
And their schedule's really in thirds because they have those first 4, the brick wall in the middle, and then Virginia Tech, Virginia, Miami, Kentucky. It's really a tale of 3 seasons.
I think that's a good way to play. I'll go 7-5. I'll go 7-5.
I'm around there too.
Okay, we'll move on to the next team.
The Miami Hurricanes.
You're in the okay.
Miami wasn't good this year. The first word of my preview was woof. Because what else can you talk about? What else can you say about their 2022 season? I was very high.
You could say Liam was right.
You could say that, but I'm not gonna say that.
Okay.
You can't say Matt was wrong. He simply wasn't exactly right.
Matt was uneducated on the subject, like many other Miami believers.
He may have had multiple bets on Tyler Van Dyke for Heisman. He may have had multiple bets on them to win the ACC Coastal, and on their over for wins. He may have lost all of those bets, but what he will not be is tricked twice. I was extremely excited about Miami this year. This year, I'm only cautiously optimistic. I still think Tyler Van Dyke's a good quarterback. I think he has a much better offensive scheme this year with Shannon Dawson. He's going to be getting into an air raid scheme after the run heavy approach from Gaddis last year, and I guess Cristobal kind of runs a more of a run heavy scheme. But I think he has a much better offense, more suited to his talents because he is a gunslinger. He likes to throw the ball. He's going to throw the ball in risky situations, and I think being an air raid offense will help that. I think getting Xavier Restrepo back to full health will be a big help for him. Outside of that, their receiver room is rough. Colby Young could be a guy I'd be looking forward to, but they didn't. I thought with Mario Cristobal's talents and recruiting and a transfer, I thought they'd bring in more in the receiver room, and they really didn't. They brought in a couple 4-star receivers, maybe Nathaniel Joseph, Robbie Washington, one of them breaks out. Tyler Harrell, who's been on 5 teams in 4 years, is a really good downfield threat. But he's only had 22 catches in his career. A few of those are long touchdowns, but other than that, what do we get? They have a deep, if not extremely talented, but deep running back room. Henry Parrish is good. Mark Fletcher, if they're one of their true freshmen, should be good. Donald Chaney and Trevante Citizens are both good, but none of them are really great. So that's the big question with their offense is what do we get from the receivers and running backs? Their tight ends, I think, will be really good. Elijah Arroyo is good. After they lose Will Mallory last year, obviously was one of their bigger losses. Cam McCormick, I think, is really good. Elijah Arroyo is good. Riley Williams is their freshman there. That people are talking about him as being the next Miami tight end. But obviously, we have to wait a bit and see on that. But their O-line should be good. But what do we get out of the skill positions on offense? That's going to be the big question mark there.
It's why I was hammering the table about before last season was I wasn't a believer in the offense. I didn't like the scheme. I didn't like anything about the makeup of that roster. And I kept identifying they don't have a WR1. They just straight up did not have one. They had opportunities to go out and get one in the portal last year. They didn't. They had the same opportunities this year and still didn't. You had guys like, I'm not going to forget that they had Tyrese Chambers, who was at FIU, ends up going to Maryland now. They had him, who is an outstanding receiver, not last season, but the year prior. Last season, FIU was a dumpster fire, dealt with injuries, Tyrese did, and just he was checked out. The team was checked out. He'll bounce back this year for Maryland. But he was at FIU in Miami. He was waiting for the Miami Hurricanes to call him up, say, yo, you interested in transferring here? That's an established receiver that they could use for TBD in that offense. They didn't contact Tyrese.
He instantly steps in their wide receiver room as their number 1 receiver. Instantly.
last year, and then with a good year, he's probably off to the NFL. And if not, he he's an even better player going into this year. They'll just crush at Maryland. So like that frightens me that we keep looking at this Miami receiving room that's just not littered with extremely good talent, right? Like they've got solid players. They've got like it's just there's no game breaking talent. How do you not vie for that? When you have Tyler Van Dyke, who struggled so much last year, could not live up to the hype, and it wasn't all his fault. It never is all the quarterback's fault, unless they're truly garbage. But in his case, it wasn't. How do you not try and set him up for the most success possible? Like that to me it's a slap in the face to TBD, and I don't know, dude. Like there's just how many receivers did you see in the portal this past go around that we were like, oh, that's a dude. Oh, that's a dude. And a lot of them win the ACC. Ollie Jennings, Devontae Walker.
I think there's no less than 10 to 15 wide receivers that were in the portal that would be the wide receiver number one in Miami.
There might even have been more. Like, I don't even think I think Andrew Armstrong, who was at Texas A&M Commerce, went to Arkansas. I think he would have been a guy. I think Mr. Higgins at Iowa State, who was from Eastern Kentucky, I think he would have been a guy to identify. There's too much talent. Ollie Jennings, we'll talk about him in Virginia Tech later. If he went to Miami, his stock just is out of control in this preseason hype, and nobody's talking about him now. But the good thing of Miami is the fans are going to show up to watch the defense.
The defense is. Wait. I like the defense.
Let me paint the picture. The fans are going to be out there, and they might have paper bags on their heads when the offense is on the field if things go south. But when the defense is on the field, the paper bag chains comes off. The turnover chains come back, and they're excited. They're loud. They're proud. This is the U.
Yeah, it starts in the secondary. They lose Tyreek Stevenson, but they bring in a lot of transfer talent. Jaden Davis out of Oklahoma, Devontae Brown out of UCF. Both are multiple year starters for their teams. Corey Couch is back. He'll be in the slot. Then they have the best safety duo in college football with I won't say the best two safeties in the country, but I will say two of the top three. James Williams is a freak of nature, 6'5", athleticism, great instincts, and Cam Kitchens is more the defender. So James Williams in the box, Cameron Kitchens back deep. They are the best safety duo in the country, hands down. They are phenomenal. They, in my opinion, should both be first-round picks. Will they be? Probably not, but I think they both go in the first two rounds. They are two studs. Then linebacker Corey Flagg Jr., Francis Maligoa transfers from Washington State to join his brother, who was offensive tackle recruit, 4-star out of IMG Academy. They'll be on the linebackers. The defensive line has studs: Jafari Harvey, Reuben Bain Jr., Akeem Mesidor, just studs at all levels deep. They bring in Jaden Wayne, a 4-star signee who's probably going to be, he's a freak athletically. He's going to be maybe a little offensive defense. They haven't talked much about it, but I know at IMG Academy, he played both receiver and the end, and he was a good receiver. So it's going to be interesting to see if they use him out there. Hey, maybe that's the receiver that takes the step forward for them. Maybe. But their defense is really good.
It is very good. That's why they have a ceiling of 9-3 per some guy, Matt Townsend, 4 of 6-6. Realistically, cautiously optimistic, 7-5, which flips the 5-7 from last year.
I think they lose to Florida State, probably looking at the schedule. They lose to Clemson. As cautiously optimistic as I am, I can't see them winning either of those games. But other than that, they lose at North Carolina, probably. Outside of those 3 games, their schedule is a little easier. They dodge Duke, which is a big step in their schedule. But Bethune-Cookman, they should beat. Miami, Ohio, they should beat. Temple, they should beat.
People are saying College Game Day should have gone to Miami, Florida, Miami, Ohio. If Miami loses to Miami of Ohio, what are the repercussions? Like, what do we do to punish the Hurricanes?
Miami, Ohio is the U. It's as simple as that.
That's what I was gonna say. Do we just give Miami of Ohio the U? I think you have to, and they get the turnover chains. All of them that Miami's had go to Miami of Ohio. They go to Oxford.
The tweets are going to be crazy if they lose that game. This is the real Miami.
It's going to be endless. We might have. I think we'll get started here with some ideas. We make a 30 for 30 meme about Miami of Ohio. This is the best team, actually, the U. But yeah, week 2. Yeah.
That's a football game.
It's certainly one of the football games. I again could not believe the hype that there was for this game last year, and it ended up being.
It was a brutal game to watch.
It ended up being maybe a little bit worse than I expected. I expected like something horrible to take place. That was a 17-9 game that there's not one play in it that you could remember. There's not one moment that you remember. There's not one fan that was at that game that says I was there.
I remember one play. The Devin Achane caught a screen.
Wow, sick.
It was a good play. I was like, man, Devin Achane's a good football player.
he was a very good football player. But yeah, like A&M week 2,
and he won't be there this year.
A&M week 2, man, that is bright light. Mr. Muhammad and Evan Stewart going up against some of these Miami DBs. We'll see that. That's gonna be fun.
If Miami loses one of the first, I guess we could say 4. One of the first 4 games this year, I'm putting the bag over my head and I'm no longer a Miami fan. It is what it is.
If you've watched any of our podcasts before, you know that back there's usually a Miami banner. It kept falling. It just keeps falling down. The last podcast I was on, it fell down during it, and I haven't put it up since. It's just sitting there, laying on the ground lifelessly right now. If that's a sign of things to come.
If that's not a great metaphor for Miami the last couple of years, yeah. What is?
It's up, it just keeps falling down. So you're a 7-5 guy.
I think that is, and if you look at the betting preview, 7.5 is their over under. I lean a little bit on the under there, but I think their schedule is bad enough and their defense is good enough, and I think Tyler Van Dyke is good enough that they could technically beat that.
Yeah, that's a cool thing. It's like TVD was extremely overrated last year, and I didn't really get. But when you could buy low on a guy who's still extremely talented, like always do that. The talent's gonna win out. You would think. It's just they still haven't really set up for the success that I would like. Each of the last 10 head coaches at Miami have led the Hurricanes to a winning record in their second season. 4 of those guys won 10 games. That's something.
It's possible. That would be higher than my ceiling, but it's possible.
Oh man, that they really got, as we were talking about with Louisville having the 3 different quadrants of their season that you could break up into their own season. Miami got stuck with the North Carolina Clemson back-to-back and the NC State, Florida State, Louisville back-to-back, which ain't very fun.
It does mean on the bright side that their first 5 games, they should be good.
I don't know what to expect for the A&M game. I'm thinking, I'll give a prediction. Thinking
the under.
I'm thinking 23-22 in overtime.
How do we get to that score in overtime?
How do we get to that score? Yes, we have a 16-16 ball game going into OT.
Someone's missing an extra point.
Someone's missing an extra point,
or they're going for 2 and they don't get it, and the other team makes a field goal.
It's going to be 23-16, and then they're going to score a touchdown for 22, and then they're going to say it's going to be Miami, and they're going to say, "Oh, look, we got the juice in the crowd. Let's just go for 2 and then now," and then they do.
Or the 2020 game. The first snap goes 75 yards backwards, and they get a safety. Okay. And then for some reason they still have to kick a field goal on the other side. But, you know, it happens.
Well,
Let's move on from Miami.
Yeah, you're making you hallucinate. NC State, they had the most disappointing season in the history of college football last season. I say that just memeing because the hype was out of control. I believed in the hype. Nothing went well for them last season from the jump when they beat East Carolina by the skin of their teeth. That game was awful. They beat Texas Tech. Like, their defense was showing out last year. The offense never got clicking. Devin Leary gets hurt. Still think he's a very talented player. Still think he's good. He's not there this year. Then you just had quarterback roulette. They weren't finding anything. I love something about NC State, though, and that's cornerbacks Aiden White and Shaheem Battle. As we were talking about with Miami's safeties, NC State's corners are excellent. I think Aiden White, I've ran about him a good bit. I think he could be a guy that we're looking at as a sneaky first-round talent that could rise up. I think safely. I think he's a day 2 pick, round 2 guy. Shaheem Battle could easily be in that late round 3 mix, early round 4. These are really good players. I love Ann White in zone coverage. But what do you make of NC State? I know you didn't write about them, but there's a lot of question marks for this team, and
their defense should be really good again. You talked about their corners. They have David Van at D tackle. Peyton Wilson's a really good linebacker. They have pieces on defense. The question will be, how good is Brennan Armstrong? Brennan Armstrong had a lot of hype coming into last year, and he did not live up to any of it.
But he was a product of the system. He fell short because that offense set him up for failures.
Yeah. But now he comes in. He has talent. He has a big arm. He is athletic. That's kind of like Tyler Van Dyke. He has that same gunslinger mentality. But what can he do? Does he take the step? Does he for sure beat Morris to beat the QB1? He should. If we look at the talent that those two have, he should do that. But what do we get out of that offense? That's the question mark, because the defense we both think should be good. But
yeah, I think the big thing here is he's reuniting with Robert and I think that's massive because he wasn't with them last year, and we saw what he and I were able to do successfully at UVA in their past. So I'm very excited about that.
But who's their wide receiver 1? That's
an excellent question. Porter Rooks, perhaps? I don't know. This is another team that needed to go out there and actually get a dog at receiver, and they just didn't.
Like they got DJ Collins from Clemson.
DJ Collins is like the one guy that I look at and I see big upside in.
Yeah, but other than that, their wide receiver back room is rough to say the best.
Rough indeed. I don't know. I like the defense a lot. They have a win total of 6.5. I like the defense a lot, but like, you can't have this be the same story as last year where the defense is excellent, the offense keeps sputtering, and then if Brennan Armstrong doesn't exceed the hype or any you can't have a replication of last year. You've really got to find something good going here. I think bright light, you're at UConn to start the year. If you drop it to UConn, well, season's over. Let's move on to 2024. Bigger and better things. Realistically, though, beat UConn, and then it's that Notre Dame game that you look at, and we could learn a lot about NC State and be a lot more educated on this team, how the receivers look, etc.
And probably beat VMI. Then the Brennan Armstrong revenge game against Virginia. Does he take care of business there?
Definitely should. The Marshall game is going to be beautifully ugly, because these are going to be two defenses that are going to be slugging it out so hard between Marshall and NC State. So that'll be really fun to watch. I love Ann White. I love Peyton Wilson, Shaheem Battle. Their defense is littered with talent. If NC State could find the magic that works so well in UVA between Anai and Armstrong, then good things will happen. And it's just like, Dontavian Wicks is someone that he had at UVA that he could really depend on. If you could find a weapon like that, like, there's a lot more optimism. Again, 6.5 is their win total. Parker wrote about them for us in our magazine with a ceiling of 10-2, floor 6-6, realism 7-5. I kind of look at the 6-6 range. I think that's fair. But I don't know. I think there's a world where they could get the A-4, but the schedule's tough.
Yeah, especially the back-to-back of Duke and Clemson. Haven't had to face North Carolina at the end of the year, Notre Dame beginning of the year, Louisville in the middle. There's no really. We looked at Miami where they had like long stretches of easy games. There really isn't that for NC State.
It's really VMI Virginia, and that's as clear as it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you get stuck with at Virginia Tech in Week 11 before your home game. Yeah. I think their ceiling's A-4. I don't think 10-2 is a fair ceiling at all. I think that sets the bar a little too high when we're talking about this schedule. Maybe they shock you and I, but if defense is going to be really good, what else can they get?
Yeah. If like Brennan Armstrong throws for 3,500 yards, sure, they can go 10-2.
Sure. You want to talk about the next team?
I think you should talk about the next team. This is your team.
The next team. This is my team.
Yeah, this is your team.
Is it? No.
Sure.
Duke's my team.
Yeah, this is your team. You're a Mac Brown guy.
Okay. Well, that's not necessarily true. I'm very happy that Longo's not there. I'll say that very bluntly. Very happy that Longo's not there. I think he did more bad things than good for this offense. It just became such a garbage offense to watch. I know college football fans loved it. It was, high flying at times, take shots downfield. I hated it. I hated having to watch Drake May run the ball 800 times, Sam Howell run the ball 800 times. I didn't feel like we were truly maximizing his Howell's talent. I don't feel like May's talent was exactly maximized as much as it could have been last year. I think he could have had a better year. I think he'll have a better year this year. Devontae Walker, I keep saying it. Devontae Walker. Folks don't know how incredible he is. Again, the long speed flashes. Devontae Walker is going to be in line for like 1.2K, 14 touchdowns. Can we go with that? Does that sound good? Like 16 yards a catch around? I don't know the math there. I'm just spinning numbers off the top of my head. If I dot that, that's crazy. UNC's defense has some intriguing pieces.
They were bad last year.
They were bad last year, but they have intriguing pieces like a Cedric Gray, like a Miles Murphy. Not that Miles Murphy, but this Miles Murphy. I don't know. Who stands out to you on their defense?
Cedric Gray you talked about. I think Kevin Hester is like their rock in the middle of the D-line. They need something around him to rush the passer because I'm looking at it, they were 128th in the FBS in sacks last year. That is third from last. That is not good. That is one sack a game. Oh. They need something around Kevin Hester because he'll clog up the middle. He is a good nose tackle. They need some edge rushing talent. But then you look at a guy like Cedric Gray, where you talked about is good. Came out of Rucker, is a pretty good linebacker.
I really like Antavius Lane, who's from Georgia State. I think he's a really good ball hawk. I'd love to see him get on the field early and often for UNC and really help just create turnovers for defense would be so important because shockingly, you want UNC's offense on the field more than their defense. Hot take. We'll get into hot takes later, but a bit of a hot take there. I want to go back to the offense really quick. Something we had often seen with their offense in years past was getting a lot out of a smaller receiver like a Diami Brown, like a Josh Downs. Nate McCollum, I don't know how tall he is. How tall is Nate McCollum? Nate McCollum is 5'8". He kind of fits the mold of what UNC has had in years past. I think he has a lot of juice, versatility. He's a fun player to watch. Drake May could get him the ball in the short passing game, get Devontae the ball in the deep passing game, the vertical threat. I think that's a really good mesh there. So I like that a lot between those two guys, McCollum and Tez.
I think Amarian Hampton's really good in the backfield too. Elijah Green as well, but Amarian Hampton's an absolute.
Their backfield is deep. Like it's deep with a lot of good players. British Brooks, Elijah Green, Caleb Hood, like George Padway, like they've got guys. Marion Hampton, of course, leads the way, but
yeah, I think the offense. I think we're pretty much in agreement.
Yeah.
Should be really good. But
Woodley Lampkin was a nice transfer from Coastal on the O line.
I think the defense is a big question mark, and I think the biggest critique against their defense last year is you look at the first two games, give up 61 to App State and 24 to a Florida A&M team that was playing -2 starters.
Whoa, yeah, playing -2 starters. Also, they didn't have any equipment. Their offensive linemen didn't have braces. That they were like struggling to find helmets. It was terrible.
Our old friend Andrewster will tell you he bet on the spread in that game. That was his very first bet, was after learning about the downfalls that were coming of Florida A&M enter that game. It was like 35.5, I believe. And they did not reach that. They only won by 32. But that was because their defense gave up 24 to a team that was in absolute shambles at the time.
Yeah, that was his very first bet of all time. UNC was feeling all the highs last year, and then they lost out, which started with Georgia Tech, NC State, Clemson, Oregon. They didn't win another game. What will come this season? Win total of 8.5. Ben wrote about them for us. Ceiling of 10-2, floor 6-6. Realistically, 8-4. What will go on?
I think that the big question mark obviously comes in their week 11 and 12, their 10th and 11th games with Duke and Clemson. That's going to be the big question mark for UNC. You talked a bit about week 4 against Minnesota. That should be a good game, but their big question mark will come at the end of the season. Duke, Clemson. Then if you want to throw at NC State at the end there too, their last three games are going to be extremely important in terms of their finish.
In terms of their in like the stakes of the game, like they're going to be
8-1 or 9-0 going into that game is very, very easily possible.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of stakes going in those games. In addition, because of the rivalries, like Duke, Clemson, NC State, they've got rivalries with all these teams, and I mean, heck, do we want to throw the Campbell Camels in there too for Bowie's Creek?
No, we don't.
Okay, we don't. But I mean, what are you thinking for UNC?
I think 10-2. I think there's a very, very, very real chance, and I think it's probably more likely than not, in my opinion, they go into those games 9-0. And I think they can pull off one against at either Duke or NC. I don't think they beat Clemson at the Death Valley. I don't think that happens, but I think they beat one of Duke or NC State, and I think they finished 10-2.
I think they'll get into the Duke game into week 10. What'd you say?
I said 9-0.
I'll go 8-1 or 7-2. I could see them losing to South Carolina, open things off, and I think that they could drop the ball against Minnesota or Pitt. I think that. What?
Are you saying Spencer Rattler's back?
I have a lot of good things to say about South Carolina, but this is the ACC. It just means more here. Yeah, I like what I'll go with the 8-1 going into the Duke game, and then that's 8-2, 8-3, 9-3 for UNC for me. And you're 10-2?
10-2, yeah.
Okay.
That's both of us over the over.
Well, yeah. 8.5.
Go bet the over, guys.
Apparently, you need to go bet that over. Who are we on to next? Your Pittsburgh Panthers.
Well, sure, we'll say mine. I loved Pitt last year. Izzy Abanikanda is gone, but was one of my favorite. Was one of my favorite running backs in the country. This was one of the teams where I looked and watched them do a running back by committee, and I'm like, Abanikanda is like by far your best running back. And can we just let him tote the rock? And they did that last year, and he was phenomenal at 1,400 yards. But they lose a lot of studs. But for some reason, that's been happening a lot with Pitt. And Pat Narduzzi just keeps on turning out good teams. Every year they lose studs, whether it be Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison. This year it's Abanikanda and Cansey. They lose good players over and over again, and we expect them. Okay, this is where Pitt falls off, and they come back and they put together another good year. Could they do the same this year? We're going to have to wait and see. Phil Jerkovich comes in from Boston College. We've talked about him a little bit. Extremely up and down. Whenever he's able to play, he's been pretty good, but he's missed big chunks of each of the last 2 seasons. He's reunited with Frank Cignetti, who was his offensive coordinator in his best year at Boston College. So maybe that helps him. Then obviously they lose Abanikanda. They get Rodney Hammond returns, who was one of the guys who was in that running back by committee, who is a pretty good running back. Derek Davis Jr. transfers in from LSU, and I think he is a really talented running back who could be a good number 2 in that system. And then just like last year where they lost, or 2 years ago where they lost Jordan Addison, last year they lose their top target, Jared Wayne, who you were a big fan of. But I talked about Konata Mupfield being a breakout candidate there. I think Bub Means is also a really good number 2. I think he could if they form a good potent 1-2 duo, I think this offense should be okay. Yeah. But beyond, go ahead.
I just like Mupfield a lot, and I want to stick to the receiver room. We're gonna see who really shows up as that WR3, whether it's Dejon Reynolds or one of the freshmen, Lamar Seymour, Zion Fowler, Israel Polk.
Yeah. That's the big question mark. I think they have a good 1-2, and then after that it's rough.
Yeah, a big Mupfield guy. Love watching him at Akron. Gavin Bartholomew is also a very, very strong college football tight end. Malcolm Epps could be a guy to look out for as well. Like they have some guys on the offense. They have a lot more guys than some of the other teams that we've talked about. It's just they don't have a bevy of them, right?
Right. They have it's kind of the issue with them continually losing talent year over year. They keep a guy, but that cupboard just gets a little drier. It's now a little light.
Yeah, and as we've said, MJ Devonshire leads the way on the defensive side of the ball. See, we're NFL draft guys. We eat that stuff up. 365 days a year. I've seen a lot of like late day 3 talk for Devonshire, and I think that's kind of ludicrous.
I think he should be a lot higher than that.
Yeah, and then day 2 pretty easily.
But I want to take a second to talk about their D-line coach, Charlie Partridge, who he is one of the best positional coaches in the country. He turns out a stud all ACC player every single year, despite losing continuous talent. So they obviously last year they lose Habuku Baldonado, who's a really good D-lineman for them for a long time. Elijah Cansey was a first-round pick. So they lose stars, but already he's praising guys like Deion Hayes and Naki Johnson and Samuel Okunlola. He's giving them really high praise, and I think that I bet you one of those guys is going to turn out and be a breakout, and be an all ACC player this year, because that's what he does. He turns out studs year after year.
Oh, undoubtedly, and when you look at last year's team, they went 9-4,
which was
disappointing because they lost to Georgia Tech and Louisville.
Yeah. But if you would ask people what they expected them to go before the year,
6-7 wins, if that.
Yeah, I mean, we can go look at their 2022 over/unders ACC.
Yeah, I mean, they had Tennessee. They took them to overtime. Yeah, you get that number, and then we'll move on to the rest of the pit talk before we get to Syracuse.
They were expected to go. Where is Pittsburgh? Over under was 6.5, so it was 6 or 7 wins, and so obviously getting to 9 was much higher than expected for them.
6.5 this year as well. You're starting the year with Wofford. Congrats on the dub. Cincy at West Virginia. Tough weeks 2 and weeks 3 game there. Then you're also getting UNC in week 4, so it's a tough first month after the Wofford Terriers clash. You wrote their preview. So what do you have for their ceiling, floor, and realistic?
8-4. I just think their schedule, like we talked about, that first, it's not just the first month, because after that they get. So if we talk about it in third, so the first 4 weeks, obviously tough, couple tough games, Louisville and Notre Dame in the second month, and then in the final month, Florida State and Duke. So there's no really easy third. They have at least 2 tough games in every step. So I think they could beat some of those teams. I do think they have some talent there. And if Phil Jerkovich stays healthy, I think 8-4 is a realistic ceiling for them. but I think most likely it's going to be a 6-6 or 7-5 team. So my floor was 5-7. I do think they're too good to lose more than that. But their biggest step is going to be, what do we get out of the backfield? Because last year, obviously, 1,400 yards out of Abanikanda was a boon for their offense. What do we get now that he's gone in the backfield?
Yeah, I think 6-6 is fair. I think I would agree with that. Excited to see who breaks out on the defense side of the ball. We'll go on to the Orange of Syracuse, who they've got a football team. The mob is out there. Arande Gadsden the second, exciting talent. You see a lot of people don't know whether to call him wide receiver or tight end. I call him an offensive weapon. That's why he is. You could line him up everywhere and anywhere, and he'll thrive. He finds good ways to do it. We see him line up at tight end, receiver, the slot, in the backfield, flanked as a running back, as an up back. Like, he'll play everywhere and anywhere. His catch radius is larger than Victor Wembanyama's wingspan.
Seems a bit unlikely.
Seems a bit unlikely, sure, but he just makes jaw-dropping catches time and time again. He's this team's best player. We have a 10-2 ceiling in here with a floor of 3-9. So quite the range of outcomes there. Realistic of 7-5. What do you think about the Orange?
Dave again with a very wide range.
He really took it literally when we were going ceiling and floor,
because he did the same thing with Louisville.
But
they lose some talent. Obviously, Sean Tucker is gone. His tweets are no longer there. But so there's going to be a question mark. No, his exes. No, they're Zeets. They bring in transfer Juwan Price from New Mexico State, who was good in 2021 and then had a next to nothing in 2022 with less than 10 carries, which is a kind of odd little stretch. So, but then obviously they have Gadsden at receiver, so we know we have a big talent there. But what else does Garrett Schrader get? Because that's going to be the question mark with offense. Defense, they had a shockingly good defense last year with really good play in the secondary, but I think they're probably going to have a bit of a down year this year. So I think 7-5 as the ceiling is probably a bit optimistic for even me. I think 6-6, 5-7 is more where I'm looking.
Yeah, like you lose Garrett Williams, a Deuce Chestnut. That's brutal. You get, I don't know. I like looking at maybe Isaiah Johnson as someone that plays a big role, like, and does very well with it. Jeremiah Wilson, perhaps a breakout player. Caleb Ochukwu down low in the trenches is really good. Kevin Darden, we wrote a cool story about. Brandon Ingram, nice little transfer to have. I look at the schedule. You're going to beat Colgate unlike you do in basketball, so that's something to be happy about, Hughes fans. Western Michigan, you should also be at Purdue. Oh, last year's game was super chaotic, and then you have Army, and then you're into Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State, Murderers Row from weeks 5, 6, 7.
Which is kind of like what they had last year. They started out 6-0. They were getting a lot of hype, and then they won one of their final 6 games of the regular season.
They had to play NC State to go 6-0. Then they had Clemson, Notre Dame, Pitt, Florida State, Wake Forest. Absolutely brutal.
So I think they take a step down from where they were last year, but I don't think they're a terrible football team. I think there are much worse football teams in the ACC.
Yeah, their win total is 6.5. I can't wait to see what Rocky Long does for a defense. That's going to be something that all college football fans should be paying attention to. I'll go 6-6. I think that's fair. I think their defense is going to keep them in a heck of a lot of games, though.
Marlo Wack, I don't think we talked about him. Really good linebacker.
Moving on to UVA, I think we kind of got to go a little quicker because we've done this for like 2 hours now, almost an hour and a half. We'll just be a little more cognizant of the hour. UVA, man.
We can be a little quicker with UVA here. UVA is not good.
Whoa, shocker.
They lose Brennan Armstrong. So their quarterback is Who is their quarterback?
Their quarterback is probably going to be Tony Muskett.
That's going to Monmouth. So
yes, he is from Monmouth.
Get a little FCS love in there, but we realistically can't expect very much out of Tony Elliott and UVA. Tony Elliott has been treated a little harshly in his first 2 years, and I don't think it'll be much better.
Yeah, I don't think year 2 is going to be very good for Coach Elliott. They have a win total of 3.5. But let's not forget the game that they and Miami played last year, where it was 14-12 in the quadruple OT, which came off the heels of a 16-9 win over Georgia Tech. They won 3 games last year. The hype was out of control for them. I think the hype was out of control for them going into last season because people were expecting Tony Elliott come from Clemson. You got Brennan Armstrong. You got a lot of good talent. What could this team do? This offense is going to be super good. Complete opposite. The offense was awful. It was evident very early on. I thought, that the Illinois game was just awful. That was a dagger in their season. They couldn't come back from that. They shouldn't even beat Old Dominion 16-14. They were in so many ugly games. They're going to be in a whole lot of more ugly games this season. Ben wrote this preview for us. He had the ceiling at 7-5, floor at 2-10, realistically 4-8. I'm going to say this right off the bat. One of my bold predictions: Virginia loses week 6 to William and Mary.
I go 3-9 here, or 2-8, because on top of their offense being extremely bad last year, they were 126th in scoring. They lose a lot of the best players from that offense. They lose Brennan Armstrong. They lose Dontavion Wicks. They lose Keaton Thompson. They lost a ton of good players on offense and on defense too. Fentrell Cypress, we talked about transferring to Florida State. Anthony Johnson was first team All ACC last year. He graduated. I think went to
the Saints,
I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they lost a ton of talent.
So to say the least.
3-9. I think 3-9. I like Toby Pace from Clemson. I think I
like Malik Washington.
So they brought in some good players, but I just don't think it'll be enough. I think 3-9 or 2-10 is where I'm at this year.
Okay. Let's do this quickly. Tennessee 0-1. James Madison. Are we giving them the win or not?
I don't think so.
0-2 at Maryland. 0-3. NC State 0-4 at Boston College in the game of the year.
They could be Boston College. I'll give them 1-4.
1-4. William and Mary. I'm going 1-5.
You said 1-5.
Yes.
1-6 North Carolina.
1-6 North Carolina. 1-7 Miami.
I think they could beat.
You never know there. Georgia Tech.
I think they beat Georgia Tech at home.
2-7.
Then lose Louisville, lose Duke.
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech to fight to get to 3-9.
2-10 or 3-9. Yeah,
that's what I said.
I think under 3.5 might be a cheeky little bet, but I think there's a better way to do that, and that's just betting James Madison money line and William and Mary money line when they play Virginia. You'd be getting better odds than the under 3.5 win total. So just a little pro tip there.
Let's move on to the last game of the season. We talked about they were going to be fighting to get to 3-9, and we said that was going to be against Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech is the next team we are going to talk about. They were bad last year. They went 3-8.
Their win total this year is 5.5.
So it'd be a step forward for them.
It would be. What do you think about the Hokies? I've got some takes.
I think 5.5 is probably a little optimistic for them.
Yep.
They bring in an exciting quarterback in Kyron Drones from Baylor. He could be good. They bring in Ollie Jennings. We talked about being up from ODU. He's one of the better receivers in the portal this year. We were really high on Ollie Jennings. He was a stud for ODU, and I think he should be really good again. But it's one of those things you kind of question: just why did he go there? Like we talked a lot about during the transfer season. Why aren't teams more excited to go to Duke to play with Riley Leonard? You'd think so. Like a guy like Ollie Jennings would have been thrilled to do that, but he came here. He's a good receiver. But beyond that, it's going to be tough for their offense. Their O-line's pretty good, but beyond those couple guys, who do we see breaking out?
I like Jalen Lane from MTSU. I think he's a sneaky solid receiver. I like DeQuan Felton from Norfolk State a lot. So it was really tough for me as fans of Ollie Jenks and DeQuan Felton to see them go to Virginia Tech to play into the offense that just doesn't excite. It's not very intriguing. So it was tough for me to see those guys go there. I think DeQuan Felton he and Andrew Armstrong were the best projects in the portal. Like they're the best guys to take a bet on that had extremely high upside. And if they don't pan out, then whatever, you move on. And it is what it is. But I think that Quan Felton's a freak of nature. He is an all-around talent, big, strong, fast, moves very well, makes some jaw-dropping catches. It's just you have he and Ollie Jenks on this offense, and it's kind of like that dragon meme where you have the two strong dragons, then you have the goofy little guy. That's the rest of the VT offense. Unfortunately, I like Kyron Jones is the guy. Like I think he has to be their quarterback because he has the most upside. He has the most playmaking ability. He has the highest ceiling. He like.
He has to be better than Grant Wells.
Yeah, the biggest big play potential. And I think you kind of just, if he falters sometimes and throws interceptions, make bad decisions, you got to live with it. You've got to let him play early. You've got to let him take the QB1 job. You have to let him live, learn, and grow. And with that comes mistakes. You're probably not going to be a very good team this season. Set him up for success going into 2024. That's what you should want to do. You should want to identify Kyron Jones as the next quarterback of your program for a few years. So again, let him live through it. Let him learn. Let him mesh with Ollie Jenks and DeQuan Felton for a year so that he better be better with the next receivers coming in.
It's kind of a situation we had similar to Boise State last year with Bachmeier and Taylon Green. Is just let Taylon Green take that job. There be a few mistakes probably, but he is easily the most talented quarterback on your roster. So you have to let him learn. You have to let that offense grow with him.
Exactly. Now, okay, what are we thinking for the schedule? 5.5 the total.
Which is, if you look at the talent on Virginia Tech, you might think 5.5 is a little high, but then you get to the schedule. ODU, not bad, not good.
Revenge game from last year.
The Rutgers, not great. Marshall, they should beat Marshall. Boston College, they should beat Boston College. Syracuse should beat Syracuse. So there are very winnable games on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, there's winnable games. I think they'll beat Old Dominion. I don't think they'll beat Purdue. I don't think they'll beat Rutgers or Marshall. I think it's going to be a season of growing pains.
I think that
it's fine. Like growing pains are fine. Like you have to recognize that success doesn't come immediately, and that you have to go through these periods of just downfall before you get back to the top. So, go win 5 or 6 games. Go win 6 games. That's a huge accomplishment for this team. Go participate in a bowl game and see what stems from there. You build momentum going into 2024.
You get into a bowl game, you become that much more appealing as in the transfer portal. Like more guys will want to come play for you. More recruits will want to sign to you. You can't just expect to go 11-1 and all of a sudden, hey, we're a powerhouse team. You have to let your team grow.
Exactly.
Do we want to move on to our last team now?
Yeah, Wake Forest.
The Demon Deacons.
All right. So, identifying Wake Forest immediately. As I mentioned earlier, Jamal Banks and Donovan Green are incredible receivers. Taylor Morin's also a very solid slot receiver. You're going to be very comfortable with the receiving play. Comes down to quarterback play. Who steps up? Is it going to be Mitch Griffiths?
Maybe. Could be. I think he's the most likely person that's going to step forward and be that starter. Is of the guys around him. Maybe Walker Merrill.
Yeah, so I think that Wake Forest often surprises people, and while we're looking at Mitch Griffiths as the likely quarterback, I could still see Wake Forest surprising people. Their win total 6.5. They won 8 games last year. let's go. Let's go look at the schedule. We
Elon week 1.
Elon's a win. I'm gonna give Vandy. A win as well, so that's 2-0. Old Dominion 3-0. Georgia Tech 4-0. So those 4 wins right off the bat in the first month. You're at Clemson's a loss. Can't get them a win at Virginia Tech. So they're already kind of sneakily a 5-1 through the first half of the season. Then you have Pitt,
That second half is rough,
home,
though.
at Duke, NC State, at Notre Dame, at Syracuse. I think 7-5 is realistically where Wake Forest would go.
Yeah, and I do think that their schedule being easier in the starting part of the year is good for Griffiths.
Very good for this team.
It's a team that needs to grow throughout the year. So I think if being those easy games early, maybe they mesh it up. Maybe they can steal one of those games later in the year against NC State or steal a game at Notre Dame. Is it likely? No, but they could steal one.
They very well could. Now, who are some of the players on the defense that you look out for?
They have a lot of good. Chase Jones is a really good linebacker. I actually put him as a vote for one of my all ACC linebackers, which says something in a very deep linebacker conference. Deshaun Jones, it could be a breakout candidate for them. Kevin Pointer is probably one of their starting D tackles. He is a rock in the middle. And then Jasheen Davis, obviously a stud around the edge. He was their sack leader in 2022, should be so again this year.
Yeah, I like Malik Mustafa and AJ Williams as well at safety. I don't know. So what do you say for Wake Forest?
I think 6-6. I just don't. I think that second half of the schedule is rough enough where they go on a little bit of a losing streak from week 7 to 11. Maybe they get one against Clemson, but I think they probably lose 4 or 5 from week 7 to 11.
All right. Now let's get into some predictions. Let's go offensive player of the year first. I went with Riley Leonard.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair option. I went with Will Shipley. I went away from quarterback because I often think awards are a little, biased towards quarterbacks, but I think Will Shipley is a really, really good running back. He is, especially just as an all-purpose weapon, because he's on kick return too. He receives the ball. I think he's a stud, and I think he could put up a sneaky Heisman year.
Yeah, and for Riley Leonard, I went with him because he's starting to build up his hype and resume a little before the season starts, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting that to happen during the Clemson game for people to recognize his talent. But this kind of going to be the case all year where if Duke overexceeds and they play really well, Riley Leonard's going to get so much hype. Voters are going to give him so much love. Defensive player of the year, obviously, had to go with Jared Verse. We talk about maybe 12, 13 and a half sack guy.
Mm-hmm. All right, so next, for my ID play, I went Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who son of obviously Jeremiah Trotter Sr., a former NFL player. I think he is the best linebacker in the country. If you look at 2023 mock drafts, that's someone the Eagles have been mocked a lot. And as a Eagles fan, I would be extremely excited about that, as we do not have much going on in the linebacker room. I think Jeremiah Trotter's a stud. I think he's really good defensively.
Coach of the year. I'm going with Mike Elko to win it back to back because I do think Duke is going to be really, really good this season.
I think that's fair. I think if Duke ends up being 9-3, that's very realistic. But I think if Florida State goes 12-0, I think it's just gonna go to Mike Norvell. Sometimes Coach of the Year a lot of time goes to the team like they kind of had a shocking year. If a team just goes 12-0, you got to kind of lean towards them.
Yeah, and then ACC championship, you're going with
FSU beating Clemson. I don't. It's between obviously Duke or Clemson for that second game for that second team against FSU. I think FSU makes it pretty easily. I think Clemson gets there. I think Cade takes a step forward, but I think FSU is still going to lean it out.
Yeah, I'm going Florida State beating Duke in the ACC championship for a few reasons. Florida State Clemson is just what everyone's going to say, and that's boring to do. I'd rather be wrong being different than be right being the same as everyone else. That don't mean anything. So just give me Duke in the ACC champion game to back my extreme belief in Riley Leonard and this Duke program. hey man, maybe I should have gone Duke winning it to fully immerse myself into that. But I'll go Florida State over Duke in the ACC championship. And we're on to some hot takes and bold predictions here before we close it on out. I kind of already gave mine. One of mine was Virginia loses to William and Mary.
I think it's very possible. Virginia is a rough team, and William and Mary is an exciting FCS team. My first one, Miami's back. I was cautiously optimistic. No, we're throwing out the window. Miami's back. Miami won 10 games this year. Tyler Van Dyke's a Heisman candidate.
Oh. Do you want to go with your second one too?
I will go with my second one. I kind of just talked about it a little bit. I don't think it's going to be him, but I will say 3 of the 4 Heisman finalists are from the ACC. And I think the easy options are obviously Riley Leonard, Drake May, Kate Klubnik. But I think if you or not Kate Klubnik, Jordan Travis. I don't know why. But I think you could also get, if Kate Klubnik has a breakout year, maybe he makes it. Will Shipley has a phenomenal year, maybe he makes it. I think I say 3 of the 4 Heisman finalists are from the ACC.
Okay, I'm gonna go with. I'll stick to the Duke thing, Riley Leonard thing. Less than 4 interceptions from Riley Leonard this season. He had 6 last year. I think he cuts it down by 2.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He's an extremely accurate quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's go with your third one.
I'm kind of worried yours is going to be the same as mine, but I put Devontae Walker Biletnikoff finalist.
Yeah, mine was well, I guess I can't technically do that since I'm Biletnikoff voter, but I could say I think Devontae Walker will impress so many people that he gets there, other people that he gets there. I think that's a really good call. I would go. I don't know. I would just go Devontae Walker as a first-round draft pick after the season.
You can do all American.
I could do that, but first-round draft pick is more for me.
That's fair.
It just sounds cooler. Yeah, that's it for the ACC preview pod. Hope you enjoyed. If we didn't talk enough about your team or something, check out the preview magazine, $9.99, best deal in the biz. Appreciate y'all for listening or watching. Make sure to leave us a good rating on Spotify and Apple, and like and subscribe on YouTube, and we appreciate you. So see ya.